Hello, welcome to Lava. Good evening. This is the Canada event, and we're welcoming our friends from the Upa North, as they say, eh? So I'm Darren Ng. I'm the Executive Director of Lava. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm here just to introduce Lava. For those of you who aren't terribly familiar with it, we're here to support the ecosystem, which we see as a giant mesh network of all these different communities. And we've been working hard to also represent the Los Angeles venture community to outside interests. In this case, it's Canada. Last night it was Vietnam, actually. Up and coming next week, I'm going to be brief so that we can get going with this panel. Next week is a crazy Lava week. We have 4 events going on. Not all of them are on the calendar yet, but you'll see them pop up shortly. Tuesday is the Canna Lava event, so the Cannabis Lava on Equity. On Wednesday, the 28th, is Women in Lava. If you are an entrepreneur, you should definitely join us for that event because you'll want to get some insights on how to manage a board of directors, and that's more important than you might realize. On Thursday, we have the gamer.vote. So the esports and gaming group will be focusing on gamer.vote, which is a movement, and we've got some pretty high profile folks joining us for that. And then on Friday, we've got the Lava Lobby group, which is a really bad name for our little alliteration type of thing going on. And we'll be covering the vote, some technology on the voting, and we've got some pretty high level politicos that are going to come in and just sort of explain some of the things if you haven't voted already. So some of the initiatives that are out there. So without further ado, I'll introduce Sharon and Michael. Sharon Raybinder and Michael McClune. They are our co-chairs for the Global Lava Committee, and they have been doing a fantastic job with all of the different programs we've had. I think we've covered EU, we've covered Latin America, we've covered, the Middle East is coming up. We've covered Africa, and we've covered India already. And today, obviously, we're in Canada. So welcome, you guys both. Thank you so much for all your super hard work. And I'll turn it over to you guys.
All right.
I'll be quiet.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, the hard work's paying off. We're doing some really exciting things. Darren alluded to something about Vietnam. So he and I represented the startup ecosystem and the venture capital ecosystem in a trade delegation between the mayor's office of Los Angeles and Vietnam. It was a lot of fun. Very esteemed participants there. We're a little bit humbled, but it was great to talk about the innovation and the collaboration that the Los Angeles market really thrives on. And then Sharon and I, not to toot our own horn, but I think we're doing great stuff because as Global Lava, we support and facilitate and perpetuate and accelerate the global perspective of everything that's going on in LA. We're now a resource, a concierge, if you will, so people could come to us and learn about, how do I make this move across this border, or who do you think could fund this sort of expansion? And it's really exciting what we're doing. So in 2021 is going to be a big year. So my name is Michael. I'm the co-chair with Sharon. I always forget to do this, but I have a business accelerator that focuses on cross-border growth. It's called the International Business Accelerator, IBA.io. Canada is obviously one of the first markets and the first commerce and culture that people think of when they're just starting their global strategy. So I'm excited about this, and so thanks to everyone. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you. So we'll have our panelists start their videos, and Lorraine, I'm going to introduce you. So thanks everyone for being here. So we have a lot of folks from Canada, all over Canada, except for BC, because in British Columbia there are elections, and it is a period called the interregnum, I learned this month. So we plan to do a BC event in 2021, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I will introduce Lorraine D'Alessio, our moderator for today. So, and I'll say I'm Sharon Raybinder. I work for the Invest in Grenoble Alps agency, and I also work for the region, the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region in France. I was a French major in college, and that's how I got into this. And I help people understand opportunities over there, and I also help the companies and labs when they come to the United States and Canada. So with, yes, no further ado, I'll introduce Lorraine D'Alessio. She is a Toronto native, a Los Angeles transplant, and she is the founding partner of D'Alessio Law Group. She was named the 2017 Leader in Law by the Los Angeles Business Journal and is the recipient of the 2018 Enterprising Women Award. I'm not going to spend too much time. Lorraine, you can also say anything that you think is relevant. And because we're starting a little bit late, I will let you take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's a true honor as being a Canadian, but also an expat. So thank you so much for having me. All right. So let's dive in. We have some fabulous speakers who are joining us today. We have Cherry Weisenberger, a Counsel Senior Trade Officer of Canada in LA and founder of Canadian Technology Accelerator. We have Annie Kim Lim, CEO and co-founder of Honeybee, and Chelsea Peet, the Consul and Senior Economic Officer in San Francisco. So I'm going to let you both actually, each of you actually give more of a background on yourselves as we are moving forward now with our discussion. And I do have some wonderful questions to ask you, and I look forward to a very engaging conversation. So maybe perhaps we could start with you, Thierry, if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you, Lorraine. Yes, I'm Thierry. First of all, I should say I felt very welcome and honored to hear the national anthem as we were beginning the session. So thank you for that little attention. That's great. So yes, I'm a trade commissioner and counsel and senior trade commissioner here. So covering, managing the team, the Canadian team that manage commercial relations between Canada and Southern California, Arizona and Nevada. We're a team of 16 at the consulate here, and we do all sorts of things. And hopefully, in the course of the conversation, I'll be able to touch on some of the most relevant element for the crowd. But I've been in various parts of the world, same capacity in Europe. Spent 5 years in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco, also as head of commercial program there, and more recently Boston. And I was for 2 years up until before coming here last year, head of innovation for my organization, the Trade Commissioner Service. That's an organization that managed 160 offices around the world and basically helps Canadian businesses grow their business internationally.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Annie, perhaps you could give us more bio on yourself, background.
Sure. I also enjoyed that Canadian anthem. Felt like I was at a hockey game. So my name is Annie. I'm originally from Montreal, and ça me fait plaisir d'être parmi vous ce soir. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Honeybee. We're a fintech company based in Los Angeles. I spent about 10 years in San Francisco Bay Area before we moved our company out to LA. And so just a little bit about what we do. Essentially, if some of you are familiar with AFLAC, the insurance company, Honeybee is the AFLAC for emergency funds for working Americans. We've created a new category of benefits called the rainy day coverage for working Americans, where employees can get access to no-cost emergency funds on demand and a personal financial coach with a few simple clicks. And I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, Chelsea, you're next. Thank you.
Sure, great. Well, thank you very much. And thanks everybody for taking the time to chat with us today. It's really nice to meet you all virtually. So as Lorraine said, my name is Chelsea Peet. I'm the Consul and Senior Economic Officer with the Ontario Trade and Investment Office in San Francisco. So I actually work for the Government of Ontario in Canada. And for those of you who might not know or be a little less familiar, Ontario is sort of in the heart of North America and Canada. It's the economic engine there. We're the 7th largest economy in North America by GDP and home to 39% of the country's population as well. So lots we can talk about with respect to that. But generally speaking, just to give you a bit of background on the network, the Government of Ontario has a network of 16 trade and investment offices in different markets around the world. Our largest footprint, not surprisingly, is here in the United States, as it's our largest trade partner and is a big priority for the Ontario government. And our mandate is really to support two-way cultural and economic exchanges between Ontario and our respective areas of jurisdiction. So in some cases, that's supporting Ontario-based companies that are looking to make connections here in California. So maybe that's, connecting with venture capital firms or strategic partners. And then on the flip side, we also work with US-based companies that are looking to open offices in Ontario. So helping them understand the talent landscape, make connections within the ecosystem, if they need sort of information on programs, incentives, all of those kinds of things. We're essentially just here to make it easy to kind of do business both ways. And it's all sort of confidential, free, and yeah, so it's great to be here. Thanks so much, and looking forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I'm going to kick us off and really get into the good stuff in terms of Canada and all that Canada has to offer. So I know, Thierry, I think you have perhaps some really good nuggets of great information to give to us all regarding the best opportunities that we have in Canada right now, and perhaps also the market entry and growth strategies.
Okay, I'm not sure we'll touch on all of that, but I can certainly start and call on my colleagues to complement. But in terms of your specific question on opportunities in Canada, I would start by saying Canada is a very diverse economy. So the opportunities will be multiple, obviously. It's not just resource and automotive, which may be sometimes seen. I mean, many of you would know it's much more than that. But generally, what I can say is that we expect post-COVID a very strong recovery. I was looking at numbers earlier today, and it would depend on sources, but between 4 and 5.5% next in 2021, which is significant. So that will create in itself a bunch of business opportunities, much more paying customers for US businesses, for example. Government, the federal government in particular, by the way, I work for the federal government, if it was not completely clear, has put in place a massive stimulus. We're talking about 9.8% of the GDP, and Canada has almost $2 trillion GDP. So we're talking about $200 billion in direct supports to businesses, some $85 billion in tax facilities and custom duty payment deferral, all sort of things like that. So really historic stimulus, and just by way of to explain the practical impact of that, I don't know if it's good or bad, but to the point that the bankruptcy filing rate in Canada right now is at a historic low. So it works. I mean, there's been a lot of public money going into the economy, and that has reduced, in fact, the bankruptcy rate, which I think is a different situation here in California. FDI has been very good too. So a lot of investment pouring into Canada over the past few years. I think we have seen a steady increase. I mean, the latest number was close to 20% increase in 2019, while everywhere else, the FDI flows are going down, have been declining. So I think Chelsea can speak to the Ontario specifically, but in a nutshell, what Canada has to offer in terms of this opportunity is a very large access to a number of markets. We have signed trade agreement with I mean, of course, the US to start with. We renegotiated the USMCA, but also European Union. It's called CETA, CTPP, which is with the Asian Rim countries, and plus 14 bilateral agreements. So a total of 1.5 billion consumers are accessible through Canada. So that's the only G7 country with such an access of various markets. The cost of doing business is lower in Canada for a number of reasons. One is that you pay 70 cents on the dollar. The Canadian dollar is much lower than the US dollar, but also corporate tax is simply lower overall, and salaries, and the cost of doing business is lower. We have a very highly educated workforce. Something else that people don't realize, but 58% of all Canadians in the workforce have a post-secondary education. This is probably, with maybe Nordic countries, top in the world, and that a lot of strong incentives for innovation. The government, for good or bad, is pretty active in Canada, as I mentioned earlier, but also on a regular basis, spurring really the innovation side of things. In addition to this educated workforce, we have also put in place, I think that's quite relevant in the context of the relationship with the US, what we call a global skill strategy, so that we can, when talent is not available in Canada, we can also bring international talents, US and also elsewhere, very, very quickly, as quickly as 2 weeks, basically to process the immigration and the paperwork. So that's working very well, and that adds really a lot of value to what we do. The other thing that we'll quickly mention is something that may be interesting to the audience as well, is that we have launched a series of super cluster initiative. We were talking about opportunities. So I think a lot of the opportunities will be derived from where excellence is being developed in Canada. We have 5 super clusters. I will quickly name them, and going from east to west, more or less across the country. Ocean tech, ocean industry, centered around the Maritimes. But again, those super clusters are applicable across the country. AI in Quebec, in Montreal, but we also have a pan-Canadian AI strategy, obviously. Advanced manufacturing, logical for Ontario. That's a hotbed for manufacturing, among many other things. Protein, food in the prairie, I mean, the bread basket of North America, and digital tech for BC. So that's really strong opportunities that are developing quickly in Canada. We have a strong life science sector. Entertainment and creative is also key, especially for us here in Hollywood, in California. This is a strength of Canada too. And then we have emerging areas which are relevant to, I think, California as well. Hydrogen, we have a national undertaking there. Clean tech, also a clean tech solution that has been a top priority of the federal government and many provincial government over the recent years. And, AI-powered solution across the board, software, tech. I will name a few companies that we all have heard of: Shopify in e-commerce, Hootsuite, CGI, OpenText, etc. Many of them actually in Ontario. Is really a strength of Canada. We're such a vast country that we have to stay connected, and IT infrastructure has always been a key feature. I will just close on that with some comments on the bilateral opportunity, bilateral relationship. It's California, Canada. It's a $50 billion plus US dollars relationship, trade relationship. There's also a lot of investment going both ways. Canada is the second largest investor in California. US is the biggest investor obviously in Canada. There's more than 500 businesses in SoCal from Canada established there. Most famous one, City National Bank. It's a branch of RBC. Brookfield, the king of high-rise in downtown LA. Avison Young, also in real estate. Lululemon, for those who are more familiar with brands, and just to give a few examples. Venture capital is also a big factor. Always has funded like close to 50% of all the venture capital in Canada is coming from the US. Yeah.
If I may interject, thank you. Wow. So fascinating. And I think that this will, exactly what you're describing is going to feed in so well actually for our next question. If you don't mind, just because.
No, of course, I've been long.
No. I'd love to hear, and I think the audience would love to hear, from, sort of from the more corporate side.
If I may just add something, last very, very important point. Our biggest export is our great people, and such as any limb. So I hope Annie will have a chance to explain her journey that exemplify, I think, the California opportunity.
Exactly, yes. And I think the perspective that you will bring, Annie, we are all on our edge of our seats to hear. So please take the floor. We were talking about, of course, the opportunities Canada has to offer. If you would elaborate a little bit for best opportunities.
Sure. So Honeybee actually did start out in Montreal. It was actually my parents' basement. And so it was an interesting journey because we did get venture backing initially out of Montreal and then eventually out of San Francisco. And so there were some challenges because when we got VC backing from the Bay Area, they really did want us to be in San Francisco. And of course, it made it extra challenging. So I did have to move out to the Bay Area as soon as we got our seed funding because most venture capitalists really wanted us close by. But on that note, I would have to say some of the greatest developers came out of Toronto, out of University of Waterloo, and all of our developers come out of there now. And so they're all based out in Toronto. And I would have to say for anyone that are, especially a lot of startups out in the Bay Area have looked at Canada as great engineering talent. Like Terminal.io is a great tech-enabled platform that makes it easy for US-based startups to hire top engineering talent out of Canada. And so I did recommend a few engineers to work there as well. And so that was part of like the journey. I started out of Montreal. I didn't really know how to get access to the VC network. It took a lot of time, but eventually I did have to relocate in order to build a business out of San Francisco.
Okay. Wow. So that's an amazing story, and you're fight, and you figured out your answers, and then therefore the growth. So that's great. Thank you so much. I think we're gonna turn to you, Chelsea, to get your perspective based in San Francisco there, Trade and Investment Office perspective on the best opportunities in Canada now.
Sure, yeah, thank you. And I think, you know, what I would add to it, it would sort of echo a lot of what Thierry and Annie sort of said. So I think it all starts with a very strong relationship, and Ontario, of course, has a very strong relationship with California and Southern California in particular. You know, there are more than, and Thierry sort of touched on this too, but there are more than 300 business establishments in Southern California that are headquartered in Ontario, and those businesses employ more than 18,000 people. So there are very, very strong linkages. There's actually also more investment from Ontario into Southern California than any other Canadian province. And as Thierry said, we have very strong people-to-people ties, which I think is really contributing to a lot of the great two-way exchanges we're seeing on a company level too. So you have great companies like Annie's company that's sort of moved here and set up shop, but also has a great presence in Ontario and Toronto. There are homegrown Canadian tech companies like BlackBerry, like Shopify that are employing people here in California. There are also dual headquartered companies. So Fair, as an example, has their headquarters in Waterloo, but also a second headquarters in San Francisco. And then we're also, as Thierry said, you know, regularly seeing US-based companies open offices in Ontario as well. So just as a couple examples, you know, Netflix, Silicon Valley Bank, Google, Nextdoor, they all have a presence in Ontario and Canada too. So lots of activity there. And from kind of a market opportunity standpoint for companies that are thinking about Ontario and Canada, I would say is, you know, and again, this echoes Thierry, but the opportunities are really broad. So from, you know, technology to financial services to automotive, environmental technologies and life sciences, Ontario is really innovating across multiple industries. You know, it's where financial services are broadening into fintech and revolutionizing the way we invest. It's where AI is leading to safer, cleaner, connected transportation. And actually, to Thierry's point on the Pan-Canadian AI strategy, Toronto is actually home to the Vector Institute, and the government invested, you know, $44 million as part of the Pan-Canadian AI strategy in that. And now the greater Toronto area is actually home to the most dense cluster of AI companies in the world, according to a report by the University of Toronto, which is also doing a lot of work in artificial intelligence in particular. And then life sciences as well. You know, the most dense cluster of life sciences activity in Canada is happening in Ontario. And there's a lot of research going on there to support, you know, companies that are looking to cure and prevent deadly diseases, which I think is particularly topical these days. The last thing I would sort of just highlight, you know, and again speaks to sort of some of the pieces that Thierry mentioned around immigration. Ontario is incredibly proud to be a diverse and welcoming, inclusive province. The GTA Greater Toronto Area alone actually is more than 50% of the Greater Toronto Area is foreign-born, and in the province there are over 200 languages spoken on a daily basis. So, you know, we take a lot of pride in the fact that we welcome cultures from all over the world and languages and people, and you know, hoping that the next great idea comes from somewhere and sets up in Ontario and in Canada. So lots of great opportunities, I think, for people that are considering. Oh, I think you're on mute, Lorraine. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much on that commentary, especially fascinating on the AI side and how that is transitioning things, especially for legal service industries, I must say as well. So, so thank you for the commentary there for sure. I think you know, we touched a little bit, Thierry, on the a little bit on the growth strategies and opportunities there. Perhaps we can delve in more into okay, now ready for market entry. What are those steps? What are those growth for entry, and then the growth strategies from your perspective that you could share with us?
Yeah, okay, sure. I can talk a little bit about that. So just to be clear, I mean, our main purpose is to help Canadian company grow as big and as fast as possible by accessing resources in this market, client partners, and so on. We also cover, and it's the same for Chelsea, also cover the investment traction side, and that's where perhaps we can provide services to local businesses. But I would be remiss if I don't mention that the US also has a trade commissioner service that is called the US Commercial Service. So that's probably, if we're talking about straight export from California to Canada, it's probably best to deal with institutions such as the US Commercial Service, and they have offices in LA and across California. So that's always a good resource to come to, and they run webinars and so on. And there's also a state organization that does that. But of course, we, as I said, we, in terms of our investment program and partnership program, I think the best way is to start with the consulate. We can often provide directly the guidance, the advice, the service, but we can also triage and perhaps refer to provincial authorities or municipal, depends on the circumstances. As I said, we are well equipped, well resourced. We have a good, solid team, and we don't cover the whole waterfront. We are stronger in certain sectors, usually the sectors where Canada has something to offer, and also sectors that, of course, resonate here. I mean, I mentioned entertainment. That would be an obvious one. I will something I'd like to perhaps stress in terms of a way to connect with Canada. We bring Canada over here, and we bring Canadian business over here with those Canadian accelerators or high intensity service. That's a way to deliver our services for those companies we believe has higher potential. And we bring them over for a number of weeks, a number of months, sometime in various sectors. We just launched what we call the Canadian Creative Accelerator, whereby selected company in course about 6-7 comes in over 3 months and really work the ecosystem here, make the connection that they need to make. In that case, it's production house essentially for movies and TV. And music, that's also plays. But we do that also in clean tech. We are in November, we're launching something we call the SoCal Clean Tech Express. Again, we'll bring like 8 companies, more mature companies with a solution to offer to the market, and in various areas, water, infrastructure. There's a couple of verticals that we don't cover the whole waterfront either for that. We do that also in EdTech, in telehealth, and sport tech. LA is a big sports city. So again, stay tuned. You'll see a really fascinating company, and we'll broadcast it from Canada that have been highly selected in this highly curated program It's called SoCal Tech Highway. So we really bring forward the SoCal element to it. So that's really one way to engage with us, with this highly selected company, really ready to do business here, and connect with us through that those top key companies. That would be my best advice. But we have no wrong door approach, and Chelsea would be a good way to also connect as other colleagues elsewhere in other parts of the territory. We do more or less the same thing. We just complement ourselves.
And I just want to add on to what Thierry said. Absolutely, reach out to us anytime. We're here to help, and we're happy to help companies and organizations navigate the landscape in Ontario and in Thierry's case across Canada. The one thing I would say, for companies that are sort of thinking about the ecosystem in Ontario and Canada writ large is there are, very similar probably to Los Angeles and California, there are a number of organizations that support companies and in exploring kind of, getting, integrated into the ecosystem in Canada. So for a number of incubators and accelerators and networking associations. So just, to give you a couple of examples, in Toronto, if you're in the technology space, there's a great organization called Tech Toronto, and they represent the technology community in the Greater Toronto area. They bring people together in different verticals, whether it's, straight up tech or health tech or fintech, and they bring them together on a regular basis where they can network with each other. So we can always provide information on different kinds of groups like that would be great for you to just be connected with if you're looking to make more connections in the Ontario or Canadian landscape as well.
Just a little factoid that may surprise some. Toronto last year hired more tech workers than Silicon Valley. So really, on a global stage, it's a global hub for tech.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting time for Toronto in particular, but I think, a number of cities across Canada. Earlier this year, Google announced they were going to hire 5,000 new employees to continue to grow their operations in Canada, which I think is a really strong testament to the tech ecosystem up there. So, yeah.
Well, exciting. We're definitely ready for you, that's for sure. And that's really amazing to hear about the clean tech. There's been some wonderful Canadian events in Los Angeles at the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, LACI. And so it's, right? So great to hear about all of the growth in Toronto and elsewhere. And I should mention that we were talking about multiculturalism and immigration. I'm actually originally from Mississauga. I don't know if there's any Mississaugans in the audience, but I would argue extremely multicultural of many cities across Canada. Hence me going into immigration, of course. All right, I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Annie, to talk about the market entry and as well from your perspective, and really digging into, of course, your personal story, which is we all are getting so much from. So thank you.
So essentially our business is really based on the working population in the US, which is part of the reasons why we had to relocate, just to understand some of the struggles out here better. And of course, the company essentially started from my own financial setback, which has helped me discover a fundamental problem here in the US, where working Americans unfortunately have to rely on a $90 billion payday industry to get by. And so I know that Michael mentioned that the California and Canada had almost roughly the same population, but you can only imagine when 7 out of 10 Americans live paycheck to paycheck. It is a huge struggle. And of course, we have intentions to expand into Canada. That's a question I get pretty often, but there's a huge issue out here in the US, which is why I wanted to really focus out here in this fundamental problem here with a lot of people that are living paycheck to paycheck. And I did have a question from someone as to, where I was located. So I mentioned briefly that I had to relocate to San Francisco, and I did spend 10 years out there. And part of it is, networking, just a lot of networking and really understanding, what VCs were looking for, and really continue to build that network. And it was only until I became comfortable with the strong network that I had built to relocate our team out to Los Angeles. and partially because the talent and the hiring became extremely difficult and competitive, unfortunately. I was located in an area where down the block, I was next to Dropbox, Slack, Pinterest, and Airbnb. So extremely tough to compete with as a seed stage company. So I did end up hiring, our developers are in Toronto, but I did end up hiring customer service and of course, our sales team out of Los Angeles. So I think really navigating through trial and error, unfortunately. And I think that's how you learn when your back is against the wall and then you really have to just figure it out. But those are some of the discoveries I had made, especially with the hiring process for our team.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I think we have very much addressed that question, so thank you, and fascinating. All right, so I think we'll get into the finance funding side of things. A gripping reality to any business that's going from startup to seed all the way up to a law firm as well. So perhaps we could talk about, Thierry, the funding and finance landscape.
Yes, so it's always the question of finance to whom, but and there's different categories of businesses that have different needs, obviously. So I try to give a high-level brush up, and then we can pick up on more specific if need be. But of course, there's financing for business growth and export and so on. And on both sides of the border, there is great agencies, EXIM for the US, EDC, Export Development Corporation, that can finance, and provide credit insurance as well to for exporters, Canadian exporters, but finance also the buyers. Although in California there's a limitation, it may not be the case elsewhere. But then you can certainly use others. U.S. businesses can certainly use EXIM or other financing institution. Now, when it comes to doing business with Canada, sometimes, as we mentioned, you have to go to Canada and set up an office when the business case is good, but also set up an office to take advantage of all the incentives that exist for business in Canada, because most of those incentives wouldn't be available if you're not a Canadian-controlled corporation. And then you can benefit from COVID recovery stimulus. You can benefit from R&D tax credit, which is one of the most generous in the world. You can benefit from a number of goodies that our great governments are providing to companies, but you cannot if you're not, of course, incorporated in Canada. So that's and one of the great means also is we have a national bank for SAVs. It's called the Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC, which is located across the country. Also provides great facilities to support the business. Now, for earlier stage company, of course, venture capital, especially those who are great ambition and want to grow fast and are not fearful of dropping equity along the way, venture capital is the logical path. And the scene has been very, very good in Canada lately. I mean, last year we had a record year, it's Canadian dollars, but I think it was 6.2 billion. We never seen that ever in Canada. I mean, as I said earlier, perhaps 50% of all of that was coming from the US, but still a significant portion financed from Canadian institutions. We have a federal program that helps for that as well, by the way. I won't dive into details here, but all of that to say that there is also financing options for businesses, especially those that set up shop in Canada on the venture side of things. We have the startup visa. I mean, that helps the movement of entrepreneurs as well, accelerate their coming to Canada. We're very open for business, open for the best talent, and provide funding resources for that.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad you touched upon the elephant in the room, which is, of course, what we're all dealing with right now, which is a big part of why we're doing this via Zoom and not of course, in person, but of course, COVID and how we're coping with COVID, and it's such a reality for any business right now, and any business owner, that has to carefully steer the ship as you get through. So thank you for your commentary also on the relief funds. Perhaps you could touch upon your personal experience with funding and what's available and out there, and perhaps maybe even for fellow entrepreneurs you're interacting with. Love to hear your comments as well on this.
Sure. So we are venture backed, and we did start off, our first check did come out of a venture firm out of Montreal. And so once we relocated into the Bay Area, our investors did come out of there. And so it was a seed stage fund. They are really looking for founders first. And of course, tapping into that network is part of the challenge, which is why we're all here, to really share our resources and allow other entrepreneurs to talk to other VCs so that you can build that network, because that is really important when you get through the door and get your deck through, because they get cold emails all the time. And so they'll always say that somebody that has been introduced by someone within their network is usually some of the first deck they will look at. So that's part of some of the challenges I had to navigate personally. I did have to ask around from my own personal network and other founders that I had met in the Bay Area, and ask them to make introductions to their existing VCs. And that's how I got through the door. But essentially, I must say, I did talk to 130 investors before we raised our funding. So resilience is key. Never give up and just tolerate rejection. Just keep going. And of course, we're going to raise our Series A early next year. And it's going to be a tough journey, but I have to say, just don't give up. We did have, before the check came through, we only had $200 left in our bank account. And it was tough, but every meeting counts, and just keep going and ask for those introductions. If you don't ask, you don't get it. So that was my journey. And I'm sure that a lot of founders go through it, and you hear the no's and just use it as feedback and construction. Just to reconstruct your deck again and again. I had to review my deck about 90 times, and it has to be always catered to who you're talking to. Look at who the VCs have invested in, look at the type of industries and the type of founders they've looked into. And so I would say just do a lot of research. Don't expect that it's going to be just handed to you. So resilience is key.
That is an amazing number, and gosh, thank you for the inspiration there. I wondered, just as a female entrepreneur myself, actually, if you don't mind, if I can digress for just a second, did you do any sort of certifications for the business being a female-owned business, and did any sort of female associations group, Canadian-based, or assistance you could comment on?
I didn't do any certification. Our certification was more on an impact level. We're a certified benefit corporation. There's about, I think, over 4,000 certified B Corp all over the world. And it's really to demonstrate that, to balance profit and purpose. And that was really important for us on the customer end, because we work directly with employers. So in terms of certification, I didn't get any female certifications. I do have 2 co-founders that are male. So they have been such a great support system. And I think it is, I would ask you, is that something you were looking for?
I have found in my network that has been extremely helpful for female entrepreneurs and women in tech. And so I just wondered from your own personal, if you had some commentary on it, and that was helpful. Thank you. I think that there was,
I will say that I'm part of other female fintech groups that are out in Bay Area and Los Angeles, and they have been extremely helpful.
Awesome. Well, feel free to drop any names. Sounds good. Okay, so I thought I would also comment. I see some of the commentary coming through the questions here on, how do you begin this journey into Canada from an immigration perspective? And I won't steal the floor for too long, because I know we don't have that much time left. But I did want to touch upon the Global Talent Stream, which is a type of labor market impact assessment that we have available in Canada, and it's also a part of the temporary foreign worker program. It really aims to provide innovative companies in Canada to really recruit the highest specialized and skilled global talent that they need when Canadians or permanent residents are really are not available. There are two streams looking at specialized knowledge, and then another stream that's looking at really the sponsorship through a specified number of organizations that are available, everything from Technation and a very long list that can help with that journey into Canada. I could probably talk for maybe 2 hours on this topic. I just want you to know that there is a stream available. There's a lot there in terms of assessing eligibility for it. I would just encourage you to please do not sit back and self-diagnose. Talk to an immigration practitioner specialist in the area. We also have Dawn Moore with us today, who is a really huge expert with our team on Canadian immigration, and I'm happy to help. She's happy to help, and so you can grab our contacts later, and we can fill you in later, or just encourage you to talk to the right people that have that particular niche to guide you through. And so,
if I may add something, we have a team at the consulate that focuses a lot on that. So that's another avenue if you want, and we run webinar and seminar information, and there's also turnkey solution that actually coming from the private sector. Again, no time to talk about it, but it's very practical and can solve a lot of pain in the short term. So think about the consulate as well as one way to get some information at least.
And one more thing, sorry, just to add to your very excellent points on this, and these are definitely the resources to go to for sure, but because I don't think it's been mentioned yet, I think it's really important that the group know that the Global Talent Stream, the Global Skills Strategy that Lorraine mentioned, that offers work permits for skilled talent, it can happen in as little as 10 business days. So in terms of how fast the system can work to bring people into Canada, it's very fast. And I think the great thing about it too is that, through some of these programs, you can also get access to open work permits for your spouses and study permits for dependents that can also be processed relatively quickly, and so that families can stay together if they come to Canada. So I think that's really a great point to make sure everybody's aware of.
Which is our end goal as Canada. We want people that come, that they stay. So the family is a key element of it.
Absolutely. And that keeping that family unification together, absolutely. Especially in COVID, I have to say, for a person that has been separated for my family I've got some of my family in Asia, others in Canada, others in the US, we're all over the place. But anyway, we're safe, and that's all that matters. Hope you all are too. Okay, so I think it would be really great to take a little time out of our very busy schedule for this hour to look at some of the more of the questions that are coming through, and please, I encourage those from the audience to put your questions in so that we can in real time address some of your more immediate concerns or questions here. So this is really interesting from Jonathan Friedman, wonderful attorney, startup attorney in Los Angeles, who I've had the pleasure of working with. He's wonderful. I think his question is for you, Annie. He's saying, what do you find to be the most challenging aspects of managing a business that straddles the US and Canadian border?
Well, I would say payroll is actually a huge challenge for us because, of course, that's why there are companies like Terminal.io that makes it easy, but those are for developers. And so, I mean, if I could hire more sales and customer success individuals out of Canada, I would, but that is makes it extremely challenging because there are some legal aspects to and compliance that has to apply. And payroll doesn't really work the same way. So I think I would have to say that would be the biggest challenge if I was to look for hiring more in Canada. And other aspects that are, I would say, not applicable now anymore, to be honest. I used to, want to build a culture where we are all, in the same office, but with COVID, we've all gotten used to working from home. And so for me and my developers, it is really just, we network mostly through everything through Zoom, and it's worked really well over over the last few years. And of course, now our entire team does it. So I'm glad that we were all able to bring together the entire culture through a work at home new culture that we've established. So that's how I would say it was challenging, and building culture is always a challenge when everyone's remote.
Interesting. Yeah. Would you say that cash flow during COVID and the availability of access to continual investment during this time seems to be an obvious challenge to any entrepreneur right now? What would you say has been, or at least that you've heard, has been one of the single most effective strategies in businesses sort of holding on right now, and that are Canada, US?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question, Lorraine, because when COVID and the lockdown happened back in March, everybody just kind of went into panic mode. We were uncertain about everything that was going to happen. I was told by all investors to preserve capital because we didn't know if investors was going to start investing, if they were just looking to, save the companies that were, further along, maybe later stage, but we were unsure of what was going to happen. So the first thing I did is preserve capital. I cut a lot of costs, and so that we could extend our capital to wait until, further next year. So making sure that we've actually have solid revenue that comes in so we can sustain ourselves. So that's what I would say was more relevant during COVID.
Okay, wonderful. Great. Thank you for sharing on that. I'm looking to see if any other questions have hit us, but I see a lot of great commentary and wonderful encouragement that this is a fantastic panel, which we all know. So
if I may say, in terms of the capital preservation and so on for startup venture-backed companies, those who were already funded, actually, because those venture group had already their allocation and so on, I don't see a lot of, it's difficult, like always, business is difficult, but I don't see such a suffering that you could have expected. Of course, the business suffers, especially those that depends on proximity and physical contacts. That's a no-go. But when you look at numbers, investment, and there's a big lag. You need to acknowledge that. But the numbers for the first 2 quarters of the year have been like very steady. Venture capital deployment in the US, in Canada, same, pretty constant. We'll see for the second part of the year in early 2021, but maybe there'll be a little decline, but it's not as catastrophic as people would have thought.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so I think that we're just in the last final couple minutes, so I think we'll do some wrapping up, if you will. So I think that we've really gone over a lot of the important salient points of what really is drawing, and I can definitely tell you from a front lines person who is working with many companies that are coming to Canada and going on both sides of the border, that obviously we have seen a very marked increase of interest coming into Canada. And so we've talked about those opportunities that are there, that are drawing, and from not only the Canadian dollar, but from organizations that are out there to support, as well as governmental institutions that are here, and obviously the panel here. And we also talked about really that real experience of market entry and the growth strategies that I love that we brought in this very important case examples, or case in point right from you, Annie, as well as what really is the funding and finance landscape, which I think for us all in the middle of COVID is such a relevant, important question to the survival of any business right now. And it's wonderful, the opportunities that are available from a relief perspective as well. And so I will hand the floor. So I want to thank you for having me to help moderate the panel. I hand the floor back to you, Darren.
Great, thanks, Lorraine. Before I let the panel go, there were a couple of questions in the Q&A feature, and I'm particularly curious to have this one from an anonymous attendee addressed to any. What's the difference in getting VC funding from Montreal and versus the US, and is it fundamentally the same process, or are there different regulations or expectations?
So our mission was really tied to America as a whole, the working American population. So because it was important for us to get VC backing that was more related to the situation out here in the US, I would say just because our mission was really tied to the US, it just made a lot more sense. And I think there was definitely with our Montreal investors had a harder time to grasp like the challenges that most Americans were going through because the payday industry is much bigger out in the US than it is in Canada. So I just think in terms of our mission, it just made a lot more sense for us.
So the process wasn't different, but their perspective was different.
That's the process was exactly the same.
Gotcha. I'm going to squeeze in the other two questions. As a U.S. citizen, how can you launch your business? This is a general question. How can you launch your business in Canada, Toronto, if you're incorporated in the U.S.? Is it easy to get a visa? And also, if you are able to launch in Toronto, how would it work regarding taxes when generating revenue? So I think those may be some tactical questions. I don't know if anyone wants to tackle those now, given the brevity that we need you to have.
I would just say very quickly, we should definitely talk because Thierry and our teams can certainly help with a lot of those questions and helping walk you through that process and making sure that you get set up. So I would say reach out to us and we'll walk you through. Like I said at the beginning, free and confidential, so there's no reason why not to.
If you haven't,
yeah, I'm having those conversations like several times a week.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And if to the audience, if you haven't looked, our hosts Michael and Sharon have been posting the LinkedIn profiles of all of our speakers, and so you should be able to reach them there if no other way. And then if you have a question you can't reach them there, you can certainly email one of us, and we can get that routed off to our panelists. And
I will say, just to reassure the group too, it is actually very easy, relatively easy to get set up in Canada, particularly if you're already here in the US. You can get incorporated in Canada in less than a week, if in 24 hours, if you really needed to. But there's other options you can explore too if you didn't want, such a permanent entity in Canada to get registered and all of those things. So we can talk about your individual specific circumstances, but just to reassure you that it's relatively straightforward and we can help with all of that.
And might I also add, actually Don Moore from our team is pointing out the intra-company transfers that are available under NAFTA.
Yeah.
And so that is also an option. Not enough time to go over all right now, but we'd love, we can, help you out.
Great. I love this. I know we're past the time, but I'm going to squeeze in the final question regarding the Canadian SoCal Highway program that Thierry mentioned earlier. For exports and imports, does that go both ways?
No, the program is, well, eventually it can, but the program immediately provides services to Canadian companies which have been selected to come down and spend time and connect with the ecosystem to do business. Now, once they're connected, obviously there will be another way that will happen. And I'll, since it's the last, I'd like to make a plug for a similar program, and I'm very glad to share the podium with three ladies. And we have a Women in Tech program coming in. So venture-backed companies owned by and run by women from Canada will be here in Northern and Southern California in February. So stay tuned. We'd love to have you around for that.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. Sharon is trying to rejoin, but for some reason her camera's not coming on, and I was trying to turn it on, and it's not working from my end either. So Sharon and Michael, both thank you very much for setting this up.
Hey,
Lorraine,
Darren,
yes?
can I get a thumbs up or thumbs down on USMCA from the panelists?
Sure.
What do they think about it? Everybody thinks it's a good deal?
Stability is great.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an improvement.
Excellent. Okay.
Great. So thank you all. I think I was in the middle of thanking Lorraine for moderating today, and thank you, Chelsea, Thierry, and Annie for your insights. Fantastic lesson for any entrepreneurs that are out there 130, is that what I remember? 130 investors. Yes, I have raised money myself, and it takes some perseverance. And as I've been mentoring to a lot of the startups who have come through, and I've been, helping them with their decks. The deck is never done. It's never done, and it needs to be customized to each person that you send it to. If you're really, if you have your Mamba mentality, it doesn't phase you. You shoot your 6,000 shots a day, and you just keep going. So thank you all for joining us. I really I learned a lot today myself about the relations with Canada. The $50 billion between just Canada and the U.S. alone is, I mean, Canada and California alone is pretty amazing. So thank you all. I appreciate it. We're gonna shut this down. I don't have a song to take us out on because I did have the O Canada teed up, but we'll just say good night.
Good night.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.